Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about ethical leadership, chapter 11 of the textbook. One essential component of employee-centered leadership is effective communication, which you've been involved with since you were born, obviously. And without effective communication, all attempts at maintaining an ethical culture tends to fail. So we will describe some of the common ethical leadership styles that are proven to be effective in building an ethical corporate culture. Let us now talk about ethical leaders empowering their employees, their teammates, their group members, and what are some thoughts or points of reflection for all of us to consider. Keep in mind that ethical leaders within any organization cannot make every ethical decision by themselves every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. Because you need to have some time for yourself, for your family members, for your personal development. So you need to rely on others in your department, in organization, to live according to the principles that are important for you, for your organization, and those that are foundational. So many of the day-to-day decisions will not necessarily be made by managers, but by employees, especially those employees who are the closest to the customer or to the issues that need to be resolved. Employee empowerment becomes an essential component of a value-based organizational culture or value-based leadership styles. A value-based culture encourages employees to express their concerns, to bring up ethical issues to the managers and openly discuss it. And they take a proactive approach toward resolving conflicts that might come up in any given day. Ethical leadership training for both managers and employees can be helpful in the empowerment process. First, training employees should include ethical decision making, teamwork, conflict management, and those should be consistent with obviously the information that you give to them so they can be transparently making decisions based on all the relevant information that is needed to them. So they can be ethical decision makers, they can be team oriented, and they can have conflict management skills. Employee empowerment is important in creating employee-centered ethical leadership. Employees can contribute to the organization's ethical culture by reporting questionable activities, by providing suggestions to improve your company's culture, and by modeling the company's overall values to the new employees as soon as they arrive at your department or organization. So do empower and train your people, because that can basically take a life of its own to create a strong culture where unethical practices and misconduct is always prohibited and monitored by everyone, not just managers. A very important part of ethical leadership is communication. So let's talk about ethical leadership communication for a few minutes. The way an ethical leader communicates to his or her employees has just as much impact on the company's ethical culture as anything else. Transparency and reporting are two of the major dimensions of ethical communication. An ethical leader tends to create transparency by developing a culture where ethics is frequently discussed. And reporting is a two-way process where the communicator communicates with superiors and with his or her subordinates. Remember that ethical leadership communication requires transparency in reporting. Transparency develops a culture where ethics is frequently discussed and people are able to openly discuss various issues that they see as problematic for them, for a department, or for you as a leader or manager. Reporting basically means there's a two-way process. Both employee and leader feel a responsibility to report to their subordinates. and to their bosses. Reporting can be either formal or informal process when it comes to ethical leadership communication. How a leader communicates provides employees with a clear idea of the company roles and expectations for them. Communication about topics demonstrates that the leader cares enough about the ethical culture in employee participation to communicate their goals and values among the employees. It also increases employee morale when you communicate with them and when you engage them and you keep them up to date. Also, it shows employees that they can bring up some of the issues without the fear of retaliation. So they become engaged and they participate. Finally, note that ethical communication creates leader-follower relationships, which can actually lead to a mutually beneficial relationship between the company's managers, and their employees. What are some of the ethical leadership communication skills? Well, ethical communication skills do not just come easily simply because we are managers or we get promoted or we become team leaders. However, with proper training, you as an individual can actually learn how to effectively and ethically communicate with the relevant stakeholders in your department, in your organization. Organizational communication is separated into 4 different categories. You can have interpersonal communication, small group communication, nonverbal communication, and you can have listening skills. Ethical leadership communication includes all 4 of these: interpersonal communication, small group communication, nonverbal communication, and good listening skills. So practice all of them. Be prepared to be an effective communicator regardless of which of these you encounter or use at any given time. Interpersonal communication is probably the most well-known form of communication and occurs when 2 or more people interact with one another. Interpersonal communication provides somewhat of an intimate opportunity for the ethical leader to coach employees when potential ethical issues do come up. It is often difficult for any worker to communicate with his or her superior due to the differences in power status. So employee, manager, and sometimes the power status gap can be greater. Collaboration in assessing the issue are good approaches to ethical interpersonal communication for any manager and any employee. Also, collaboration in assessing any issue can be a very good approach to ethical interpersonal communication between employees and their managers. The small group communication is growing in organizations and is becoming actually increasingly important to ethical decision making, because oftentimes managers cannot be there to help their employees, so the group helps themselves. Sometimes we call them self-directed teams. Today, in many firms, decisions are actually made in teams. And these decisions impact the ethical success of the department as well as the organization. Small groups can actually increase collaboration and generate a variety of different perspectives and opinions on any particular issue, because there's going to be somewhat of different perspectives even in small teams due to their diversity. Engaging in repetitive or even routine decision making can cause small groups to sometimes overlook certain ethical issues. So sometimes groupthink occurs when 1 or more group members feel pressured to conform to the group's decision even when they personally disagree. So you need to avoid groupthink because it's not good for the team to always agree with one person, especially when one person is somewhat forceful or has a bullying style of leadership. And since groupthink is not a good thing for the workplace, you need to do whatever you can to avoid it in both small and large groups in your departments. First, you need to understand groupthink and how it can occur in your department. Second, allow open and honest discussions and encourage critiques, questioning, and criticism to avoid groupthink. Third, criticism should be welcomed and not minimized or dismissed. Fourth, create group tension by assigning a devil's advocate or having half of your team or group members on the pro side and the other half being on the con side to adequately evaluate decisions. Fifth, on important matters, bring in the appropriate subject matter experts, either internally or externally, to help your team, your group, make effective decisions and to avoid conflict in groupthink. Six, document the situation, options, recommendations, and implementation timetable, needed support, as well as the budget. Seven, have another team review your output to see what kind of conclusion that they would make for your team. And then you can assess, evaluate things from a very different perspective because they were not part of your group. So avoid groupthink as much as you can and try to diversify your teammates so everybody can think differently, see things from a different perspective in order to have effective win-win solutions for all relevant issues. Group polarization refers to the fact that a group is more likely to move toward a more extreme position than the group members might have done individually. However, if members are encouraged to speak up and to contribute, to speak their mind and create checks and balances within the team, then they are better able to hold other members accountable. The diversity of opinions and discussions can often result in better decisions if everybody's open-minded and listens and then makes a decision based on the collective knowledge and input from everyone. To ensure that group members are empowered to contribute, everyone should be familiar with the company's ethical values and principles. Everyone should be trained in ethical communication techniques and how to listen to other members' input. And everyone needs to attempt to at least understand the other person's point of views and to show willingness to seek common ground and to explore different options and commit to finding the most ethical solutions. Those of you who have read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey, you know that in habit number 5 of highly effective people, there's 2 components to it. So you first have to listen and then be listened to. So listening involves first understanding other individuals and then making sure you're understood. But oftentimes we have a tendency to make sure we're understood without necessarily hearing the other person's point of view. And that's not good because that creates more conflict in any organization. Nonverbal communication is communication that is expressed through actions, through body language, through anger, through excitement, through expressions, or even other forms of communication that is not written or oral. Paralanguage is the way we talk, such as volume, inflection, tone, in rhythm of our communication, in tone of voice. So a person's nonverbal cues are deemed more reliable than what he or she actually says verbally. If I tell you, I am happy, but I look angry, the two are in conflict, so you're likely to believe my nonverbal as opposed to me saying, I'm very happy, but I'm angry. So again, keep in mind that your nonverbal sometimes communicates more strongly than your verbals. Listening involves paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal behaviors. So we listen with our ears for the verbals. For nonverbals, we listen through the eyes. So if you're monitoring people's nonverbal, you can sort of see what they might be thinking and what they might be saying. Listening is just as important as speaking, if not more. As a matter of fact, listen often leads to you learning something new, and then you can become a better leader because you know more information about the other person. So therefore, it's always good to listen first and then lead. And in the middle is basically learning. So when you're listening, you learn, and then you can lead. That's basically the 3L model of leadership that I demonstrate and encourage managers to practice on an ongoing basis. Listen, learn, then lead. If one of the parties to any dialogue does not listen, obviously communication will become ineffective. As always, remember that ethical behavior is a skill. You need to police, you need to evaluate, and you need to improve your ethical muscles regularly so you can be the best ethical leader who can manage and lead and guide others effectively in any given situation. Good luck.